What is the paleo diet?
Sure. So the paleo diet is a way of eating that's based on the diet of our Paleolithic, aka caveman ancestors. And why would we want to emulate their diet? Well, it turns out that they were lean and fit and virtually free of the chronic inflammatory diseases that we suffer from, like obesity, diabetes, heart disease, autoimmune disease, allergies, asthma. All of the diseases we've come to accept as normal didn't actually exist in our Paleolithic ancestors or contemporary hunter-gatherers. So for 2 million years, or 66,000 generations, humans ate primarily meat and fish, fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, and some starchy plants like sweet potatoes. And our bodies, therefore, are very well adapted to these foods. They know how to process them, how to assimilate their nutrients, and they're very unlikely to cause problems in most people. And that is why these foods form the basis of what we know today as the paleo diet.
So agriculture is roughly 10,000 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think has happened as a result of that period of time where the hunter-gatherer stage ended and modern agriculture took over?
Sure. So, as you pointed out, about 10,000 years ago, we shifted from a primarily hunting and gathering lifestyle to a more sedentary lifestyle where we started farming. And there were some pretty big shifts in the human diet that happened as a result of that. One is that the diversity of the foods we consume dropped considerably. So, we know from studying contemporary hunter-gatherer populations in Africa that many of them eat over 100 different species of wild plants, which is an incredibly diverse diet. And when we started farming, early agriculture, that decreased to maybe 3 or 4 staple crops like wheat, corn, and rice that we became heavily reliant on. And the problem is these crops are much less nutrient dense than the meats and fish and wild fruits and vegetables that were the staples of our diet prior to agriculture. So this led to an increase in nutrient deficiencies and diseases caused by nutrient deficiencies like beriberi or pellagra, rickets, and scurvy, all of which were rare or non-existent in our Paleolithic forebears. And in fact, our skeleton, we even shrank. So the average height at the end of the Paleolithic era was 5'9" for men and 5'5" for women. But by the time agriculture rolled around, well into agriculture, that decreased to 5'3" for men and 5 feet for women. So a decline of 6 inches in average height for men and 5 inches in average height for women. And this is important because the average height of a population is one indicator of their nutritional status. So we can say that there was an overall decline in health that resulted from moving from a hunter-gatherer lifestyle that focused on consumption of meats and fish, fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, etc., to primarily relying on cereal grains as dietary staples.
Because some of it is a little counterintuitive. The notion, if your goal is to lose weight, that you would try to have a lower, you wouldn't want to be necessarily eating foods that have as much saturated fat. And that is not at all the case with paleo. Paleo, it says eat those foods that are pastured, but that have a nutrient dense type foods. So how does that work? In a way, it's counterintuitive.
Well, I think you're suggesting that because fat contains more calories per gram than carbohydrates or protein, that it would be counterintuitive to eat more fat and lose weight. And in a way it is. But the thing is, with the holy grail for weight loss is being able to eat fewer calories without counting them. Because we know from extensive research that telling someone to just eat less and exercise more is not an effective strategy for weight loss. And we know that calorie-restricted diets, where people voluntarily reduce the number of calories they eat, are not effective over the long term. In fact, people not only tend to gain the weight back that they lost on those diets, they gain back more weight than they were originally carrying. So what the most effective way to lose weight is to find a way where people will naturally or spontaneously, in other words, without effort, without trying, eat fewer calories. And it turns out that higher protein diets generally work well for that because protein is the most satiating macronutrient, which means we feel the most satisfied when we eat it, and it tends to promote eating less as a result. So low carb diets tend to be higher in protein. And when we eat more protein, we tend to reduce our calorie intake spontaneously, and that reduction in calorie intake over time is what leads to weight loss. And so that's why both paleo diets and low carb diets tend to be slightly more effective than low fat diets, especially over a longer term. And I would argue that paleo is even more effective than low carb over the long term because it leads to this spontaneous calorie reduction and therefore more effortless weight loss.
What is the core then of the paleo diet in terms of the types of foods you can eat and the types of foods you cannot eat or should not eat?
Right. So the core, as I mentioned, is meat and fish, fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, and some starchy plants like sweet potatoes. However, in my book, I argue that core paleo approach, while it's the best starting place, it's the best way to lose weight fast and without effort, to feel better, and to prevent and even reverse chronic disease, it's unnecessarily strict over the long term for most people. And there's no reason, in my opinion, to completely remove foods that modern research suggests are healthy when they're well tolerated, like full-fat dairy products or fermented dairy, even certain grains and legumes, things like white rice, for example, or dark chocolate, or moderate alcohol consumption, or nightshade plants like potatoes and tomatoes. None of these were available to our Paleolithic ancestors, but modern scientific research suggests that they're healthy as long as the individual tolerates them well. And that's the key point that I make in my book. We need to personalize our diet for each individual's unique needs instead of just following a set prescription.